Everybody. Okay. Continuing with the laws of Lashon Hara. Klal Tet Halacha Hey. Vedad afilu im shama livno bino ketanim. Note that even if one hears his young son or daughter, shehem medabrim Lashon Hara, mitzvah ligor bahem ulafrisha mizeh. It's a mitzvah to reprimand them and stop them from committing the averah. Scenario H. At a Shabbat table, a second grade girl describes her messy, unkempt classmate in detail. Although she is too young to understand the full scope of Shmirat Lashon, her parents are obligated to rebuke her in a language and tone she can understand and accept to prevent her from developing improper speech habits in formative years. Kedichiv, like the pasuk says, Chanoch lanar al pi darko. Very famous pasuk from Mishle. Educate a youth according to his way. Uchmo shenipaer be'orach Chaim siman shin mem gimel sif aleph. That's what's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, Linyan Kol HaYisurim Shebatorah, that this applies really with all Torah prohibitions. That once they reach the age of chinuch, you're obligated to teach your children the proper derech. Okay, he does have here a haga. V'kama tzarich ha'av lehadrich et banav tamid min na'arutam. How critical is it for a father to constantly teach his children from their younger years, to guard their tongues from Lashon Hara. Not only Lashon Hara, but all the types of forbidden speech, such as lying, or machloket, quarreling. Like the Vilna Gaon writes in his Igeret, when you cultivate your speech and character traits, that requires a lot of training. Because habit governs everything a person does. When you contemplate this, the real reason that we have this bitter sin of Lashon Hara that becomes so prevalent, he's giving you the answer. You want to know why everybody speaks Lashon Hara? Because everyone does it as a kid, and nobody tells them you're not supposed to speak Lashon Hara, and thus you develop a habit. You develop a habit as a child growing up, and no one's telling me that I can't say this, so therefore it must be fine. And therefore it's much more difficult when you get older to stop that habit. It never occurs to him that maybe the way he's talking, there is a prohibition. Even if later on he discovers that it is asur, it's very difficult for him to veer from that pattern that's become really entrenched in his nature. This would not be the case if Abba told him off and say, hey, you can't talk like this. You can't speak about that person. It's not your business to get involved, so on and so forth. Not to speak Lashon Hara, or to curse or to lie, about any Jew. The father told him he would have a lot easier time deflecting from that custom. When you train them from youth, the practice is ingrained in their character, making it much easier to be in full control of this midah of monitoring one's speech. Through this they will merit olam haba, in addition to all the good in this world. Of course, this is where he gets his name, the Chafetz Chaim, from. Depends the generation. Yeah, it depends the generation. Right? It's you always got. I got the threats. If you speak back to me like this one more time, I'm going to put hot pepper in your tongue. Right? You ever get that? Right? As a kid, yeah, you heard about hot pepper, right? And thank God I never got hot pepper in my mouth. But what's the reason why I got the threat? Because I would talk back at my parents, right? If you talk back to your parents, right, you speak like that again, and you're going to get a hot pepper. Or maybe, chas v'shalom, you say a swear word. But you're not getting threats about hot pepper if you're saying Lashon Hara. No father and mother is saying, I'm going to put hot pepper in your mouth if you say Lashon Hara. Maybe if we threaten them with with some spicy foods, they would understand from a young age that it can't be done. Kids don't know any better, right? They're children. They need to be educated. Just like, a child just wants attention, just wants to speak up. We see this all the time in school. You can have a conversation with somebody, with an adult, and your son or your daughter will come up to you and just totally interrupt your conversation and ask you a question. They don't realize that you're having a conversation with somebody else. They want to ask their question, because they feel entitled to ask their question. Now, a mistake of a parent would be to actually answer the child at that moment. That is wrong. Because you're in the middle of another conversation. You have to politely tell your child, I'm in the middle of a conversation, you need to wait. And that's when they realize. But if you don't educate them that way, then they'll always think it's right to go and interrupt people. That's children. So you have to keep that in mind. So just like we would tell them that with interrupting conversation, certainly also with regards to Lashon Hara. Someone who tells his fellow personal information. Asur lo lesaper achar kach la'acherim. You can't go and tell that to some other person, even if it's not derogatory. I gave you a secret. Why are you telling somebody else? Unless Reuven expressly grants Shimon to do so. And even if he does give him permission to say to someone else, it's only if it does not involve Lashon Hara. That concludes Klal Tet. Let's just read the summary and then we'll stop. Summary of Klal 9. Statements that are not in and of themselves Lashon Hara, but that are likely to lead Lashon Hara, are deemed avak Lashon Hara, the dust of Lashon Hara. Those are rabbinically prohibited. Therefore, one cannot, A, express incredulity about how well a person has turned out. Who would have believed that guy turned out to be such a good guy? No, that's avak Lashon Hara. You can also not insinuate that negative information exists about a certain individual. For example, let's not talk about that guy and what he did. Okay, that also is wrong. You can't instigate Lashon Hara by praising someone in the presence of his enemies excessively or in a public forum, unless the subject is known to be a tzaddik. You cannot stress specific positive attributes about the subject, implying that the subject is deficient in other areas. And you also cannot initiate a conversation with someone who is not on good terms with the subject. Yeah, that's the best. One may not make a complimentary statement that could cause someone a loss. One may not give the appearance of speaking Lashon Hara. For example, when speaking Lashon Hara for a benefit, a person must make it clear to the listeners that his intention is, in fact, for the benefit. We must distance ourselves from the company of Lashon Hara speakers and from a student who speaks Lashon Hara if we discern that rebuke will not help. 5. Someone who finds himself in the company of Lashon Hara speakers must rebuke them even if the rebuke will not help, so long as it will not cause them to redouble their Lashon Hara. 6. We must educate even our young children to refrain from Lashon Hara. And 7. It's forbidden to repeat private information even if it is not derogatory unless permission is expressly granted. Okay, we'll continue next time.